This was the scene in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, earlier this June. The protesters, mostly students from the city, gathered in criticism of what they see as the government's mishandling of the COVID-19 crisis. Police moved in to shut the protest down, but as scenes like this hit the internet, the movement rapidly spread. Nepal has been largely lost in international coverage of the pandemic. To date, the country has more than 11,000 active cases as the coronavirus continues to spread. The government dedicated 50 million USD to fight the pandemic specifically and another 750 million USD in total to support the healthcare sector. But critics say these funds aren't reflected in the response. Doctors and nurses lacked needed protective gear, quarantine centers were overrun with viral outbreaks, and testing rates remain low at 1.78%. As of June 15, Nepal has conducted less than 500,000 tests in a country of 28 million.
We're going to the Martyrs Gate. It's a memorial for martyrs who fought for democracy.
This is E, one of the facilitators of the COVID-19 Enough is Enough movement, and he was briefly arrested after the first protest on June 9 in Kathmandu. He's since been let go and continues to pressure for wider COVID testing.
Throughout the lockdown, I had been critiquing government actions. After numerous attempts at instigating something, by writing about it, I came to the conclusion that no, I had to take the initiative, And I put up an Instagram story saying, if you're interested to hit the streets to demand a better COVID-19 response from the government, just send me in your Facebook username and I'll add you to a group. We've been pretty clear about what we want and what's going on wrong. So the government has been using rapid diagnostic kits to break the chain of transmission. These kits just detect antibodies and antigens, and only with reliability 2 weeks after the date of transmission. To break the chain of transmission, to detect active cases, PCR testing is necessary. And for this long, what we've been doing is testing people with RDTs first, and only if they test positive are we testing them with PCR. So it's a mess of a strategy, It's because of the government's policy that the disease is spreading in communities and in villages, and there's blood on the government hands. That's what we've been protesting against. It was an act of desperation. We did petitions before this. We sent in SMSs to the Prime Minister himself and other government officials. We protested vehemently online. We've not hit the streets, out of happiness or by choice. We've been compelled to do so because nothing else has worked.
I think we are out on the streets, not demanding anything unrealistic, but just like asking the government to do whatever they should be doing.
It cannot be reiterated enough that the government has been incapable and incompetent in dealing with the COVID-19 problem.
Abha Lal is a Kathmandu-based journalist and academic researcher who has been on ground at these protests.
In 2006, there was a people's movement that ended the Maoist war, and there were a lot of promises associated with the people's movement. Basically, what we were promised was that Nepal was going to develop very rapidly. I don't want to undermine the fact that there has been some progress, but largely the people who were in power 20 years ago are still the people who are in power now. And the social ills that we're battling are the same ones that people were battling 50 years ago. I think a couple of young people were very, very active on social media, posting all these images of people who had been neglected by the government and the testing. And the first big protest took place in Baluata near the Prime Minister's office. I think most of us had never been subjected to any violence by the police before, so we didn't really expect anything to happen. And at the beginning, there were people like joking with the police officers and asking them to join the protests, things like that. And over time, more and more police officers started coming, and then they water cannoned the whole thing and hit a couple of people and like tore up their signs and things like that. And I think that anger and just like surprise and shock at the police treating people like that led to a level of like belligerence and just like, how can you do that? It's our right to protest.
The visuals of the water cannoning and the police brutality, it just took the frustration to a tipping point nationwide, There have been over 100 peaceful and physically distanced protests all over Nepal after the first one in Balwatar. I guess I've been more angry and civilly disobedient than some of the other folks. The police has been like, they've got orders from above, you can't do the demonstration here, you can't do it there, So there's a lot of dictating, like you can't do slogans, you can't speak against the government vocally. So I guess the nation's slowly drifting towards some sort of totalitarianism.
One of the things has been that the media spin has definitely been that these kids don't know what they're talking about. A lot of the photos that I've seen on newspapers, there was one with a young person with a backpack, like showing their middle finger to the camera.
Right now, what the government needs to understand is we're the good guys here. Because what we're telling the government is there's a greater disaster that awaits us on the other end.
We are not from any political affiliation or activists in per se. Like we are just like normal working class people trying to come to the streets to make a point, like which is important right now, I think, because the COVID situation, as you know, like it's been increasing exponentially. It's like 7,000 plus right now.
And this is a government that came from the powers of the people on the street, and they have forgotten that.
As plans for future protests continue, the alleged mishandling of the COVID crisis has turned into something of a flashpoint for a wider set of issues facing young Nepalis. With the rise in caste-based killings, ongoing border disputes with India, and a raft of government corruption cases, some wonder whether these protests are the start of a long-term movement for change in Nepal.
I am optimistic because, as I said earlier, the fact of even the most privileged people in a country saying enough is enough does mean something, and it means that the support for the government has really reached an all-time low for various reasons. There's the new Citizenship Bill, there's the anti-Dalit killings, there's general incompetence, there's huge corruption scandals. So a lot of things have been building up, and I definitely feel like the momentum is strong. That has led to a breaking point, and we will actually work towards toppling this government. But I think that's not possible without solidarity between different groups. So I guess we'll see in the next couple of months and years whether it actually is successful or not.